you open the book with a pretty harrowing scene of Martin basically being, he got in Puerto Rico by a Sicario. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for him to be, hunted by a Sicario and eventually come face to face with what would seem to most people like an inescapable situation?
So we just talked about the smuggling, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the first third of the book
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the operation. So Martin worked in Miami as a smuggler for a few years, 88 until 91, maybe. And he wanted to move back to Puerto Rico to be closer to his parents. And he had 2 young sons, and he wanted them to be able to grow up a little bit in his hometown in San Juan. And when he transferred to Puerto Rico, he obviously had to leave the Miami cases behind. He told the squad in Miami, look, I'm transferring to the San Juan field office. But again, this is like the same sort of thing. Like San Juan is doing the same thing in Miami. We're targeting similar people. Let's just work together. I'll bounce around. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Puerto Rico at the time was a hot spot, for shipments. They'd stop there. They'd dock there. A lot of people were using Puerto Rico as a transshipment hub, among other things. So Martin moves to Puerto Rico, and that's where kind of Act 2 of the book kind of begins structurally from a storytelling perspective. And, he gets back into the groove in Puerto Rico, and he's posing as a smuggler and blah, blah, blah. But they quickly come to understand that Puerto Rico, more so than being a transshipment hub between Colombia and Miami, is sort of the hotbed of cartel money launderers.
Really?
So what Martin was able to do is, again, use a source to get into this sort of network of money launderers who worked for the Cali cartel, the Medellin cartel, and most prominently, the North Coast cartel. And we can go into a little bit more detail about who these people were. But in the context of Martin almost getting killed, the money laundering operation lasted for a little over 2 years. And it was a very demanding and very high stakes operation because the funnel, the pinch point of everyone in the cartel is the money.
Mm-hmm.
You're a Colombian cartel. You're making $1 billion a month. How you getting that money home? Can't use American dollars in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bring the money back on an airplane. Like the volume of paper currency was so much that the cartels needed to find a way to get paid. So they had established a money laundering system, which is a little complicated, and we'll get in there. But there were people who would help the cartels do this. Martin, when he went undercover in Puerto Rico as a money launderer, began working for one of them, this man named El Toro Negro, the Black Bull. No one knew his real name. He was just a voice on the phone. And that's how Martin interacted with him. And this guy was very smart and pretty ruthless. But again, he was the fulcrum upon which the seesaw of money and drugs and power tilted, Drugs would go out, money'd come back in, right? And this guy controlled it all because these money brokers, they almost take control of the delivery when it leaves Colombia. They give an IOU to the cartel because they're taking a massive fee. Because the cartel at that scale, they want their drugs to leave, and then a month later, they want to see pesos in their bank accounts. They don't want to deal with any of the transactional friction, especially when you're operating in the Medellin cartel.
Yeah.
And then this guy, as you say, at the end of the book, finds out that Martin is actually an FBI agent, and he sends a Sicario to his house to kill him. And that's how we open the book, because I needed a good hook.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that this is also the climax of the book. It wasn't something that happened, in the first couple months, and it was a big mistake. It was like Martin put himself out there so far to make this case that by the time the indictment was unsealed, and he's the only person not on the indictment, the powers that be knew that he was either an FBI agent or he wasn't who he really said he was, or he was working with the feds. They didn't care. They wanted him dead. So Martin comes home from his morning run. He sits down in that chair to catch his breath, and then he hears the Sicario in the bushes. He turns around and there's a gun pointed at his face, and he's like, how am I going to get myself out of this?
What was it like hearing Martin, like when he relayed this to you? What was it just like?
He like played it down.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this guy made you kneel in your backyard with a revolver pointed at the back of your head. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I had him tell me this story probably 50 times because in that type of scene as a storyteller, you want the smallest details to land because that is how your brain operates in a moment of high stress. You know, like his adrenaline was such that it was like a state of hypervigilance to the point where even to this day, he could tell me all the little things. And that's what I really wanted from him. But Martin is so well trained that emotion was not necessarily part of his thought process. It was at first. And then he's in it and he has a goal. Either get far enough away so I can run and find a weapon, or get close enough so I can wrestle the guy and overpower him. That's it. But emotionally, it really hit him when inevitably he got some space from the guy and got into his house and he found his service pistol and he turns the corner and he sees his son's toys on the living room floor. And then he realized what he was really doing is that he was surviving for his boys. And again, we're back to that duality, you know, because a man is a multidimensional thing. Being a man is multidimensional. It's not about the cool shit you can do or the problems you can solve, but it's about how and why you do those things and what they may mean to those who you love. And in that moment, Martin knew that what I needed to do was stay alive for my family and show the cartel that they're not better than me, that I will always beat them. And of course he did.
Yeah. I can't imagine the emotions. I bet after the fact too, once, you know, the problem at hand is solved, and then you're thinking, oh my God, there's a Sicario in my house where my kids are, where my wife is, where like, I can't imagine.
And then there's all the things beyond just the firefight, right? There's all the things where it's like, how did they know? Well, did they really know? There's no like clear answers here. Like even in the book we say like the FBI never fully confirmed that the cartel knew that he was an FBI agent. They certainly knew something or had some sort of hypothesis, you know, but at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter. It was unsafe for Martin and his family to stay in Puerto Rico, and they were given a safety transfer back to Miami. And that's where Martin still lives to this day.
Yeah.
You know, but at that time, it was like, we're not really taking any chances. Maybe we've taken too many chances with this case. And again, by that time, the indictment was already unsealed. All these dudes were getting rounded up. El Toro Negro was never found. Maybe.
Yeah.
So some of the guys, you know, since there was no extradition treaty with Colombia, evaded arrest.